Now, what happens the day after the war is over in Gaza? Israel is set on its aim to destroy Hamas, the militant and the political body that's governed since its takeover of the Strip in 2007. Now, one hope for many Palestinians in the territory is a man they say could be their Nelson Mandela, Marwan Barghouti. Israel considers him a terrorist. He's been in prison for 2 decades, convicted of 5 counts of murder. He denies the charges, including that he was leader of the Second Intifada, the major Palestinian uprising against the occupation of Israel between 2000 and 2005. Before that, he was a key political figure for Palestinians, working with Israel on the Oslo Accords towards peaceful coexistence. And there's a new documentary about Marwan called Tomorrow's Freedom. Here's a preview of that trailer.
يمكن ما حكى لهمش هم عن قصة مروان.
Marwan was a legitimate leader. He became that symbol of the broader Palestinian resistance.
And I think the Palestinians, with their hearts, with their will, can defeat this Israeli occupation in the future.
If you dare take on the responsibilities and positions of leader, you are taking a tremendous risk.
Here in this street, it was the first time my father's car was hit. They tried to assassinate him.
هذا عدوان إجرامي جديد على شعبنا وعلى مقراتنا.
Well, joining me from London, Sophia Scott, the film's co-director, and from Ramallah in the occupied West Bank, Arab Barghouti, Marwan's son. Good to see you both, and thank you both for talking to us here on France 24 this evening. Sophia, to start with you, Marwan gave, I think, pretty much one Western interview that exists that's out there. It's Channel 4's Lindsay Hilsum. I've heard you talk about how that was the moment, that you knew little about him, you saw it, and that was the moment you said you wanted to make this film.
Yeah, I mean, my sister and I had been working in Lebanon, and his name was being mentioned by many Palestinians and Lebanese as this possible Mandela for the Middle East, and we found that very catchy. It's a very big statement. So we went on a journey to try and discover who this man was. And Lindsay Hilsum's interview at the time, done a few years after Marwan was arrested, really showed us who Marwan was. You know, he's very charismatic when he speaks. And we feel like that he speaks from the heart, to be honest. And at this time now, we feel like his voice is very, very much needed. You know, he believes in unity, and he believes between peace in Israel and in Palestine.
You had no access to Marwan throughout the documentary, given that I think certainly in the last few months he's been in solitary confinement. We're going to speak about that with Arab in a moment. But it's worth saying this was filmed before October the 7th. It's a story through the eyes of the family and some significant Israeli voices too.
Yeah, I mean, it was very important for us to not just speak to Marwan's family and people that were close to him on the Palestinian side, but equally on the Israeli side, because at the end of the day, there needs to be peace between two sides. You know, and before Marwan was arrested, he was working with a lot of Israeli politicians, including Yossi Beilin, who you see in the film. And these people have called for his release from day one. They recognize that Marwan is a leader, he's a political figure, a figure that the Middle East really needs at this time.
And Yossi Beilin, you mentioned, former Israeli Justice Minister, he would travel, is this right? He would travel with Marwan sometimes when they were looking at and trying to work on the Oslo Accords back in the 90s?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Marwan was there at the head of the table always until the last minute with the Oslo Peace Accords. He was the one pushing for peace. He was the one that was trying to keep the Palestinian people happy. But it was very difficult when Israeli settlements were expanding across the West Bank, when actually they should have been diminishing with the Oslo Peace Accords.
Arab, you were, I think, 11 when your father was in prison. Tell me about your life since then, what access you've had to see him in prison and a sense of, you know, well, you haven't seen him, I think, for 18 months now. Just give me that sense of your brief meetings with him, how it works.
So until after my father was arrested and kidnapped illegally from Ramallah, I was 11 years old back then. And after that, I had to see him then in court, and which is covered in the film. And after that, I would see him twice a month until I turned 16 years old. And after turning 16 years old, I would see him once every 2 years, sometimes 3 years, it depends. and they never give you any reason why they give you or they don't give you the permission. And during the visitation, it's a very tiring and exhausting trip where you go for almost 20 hours. To have a 45-minute visitation where we have glass between us. We're never allowed to touch each other. I haven't touched him since he was in prison. And but at the same time, when I see him and when I see the positivity and the optimism that he has always, I've never seen him upset. I've never seen him worried about the future. He's always calm, always at ease, and knows that we Palestinians have a just cause, and he dedicated his life for this cause. So you can see all of that during the visitation.
Am I right to say that when you see him, you're usually given about 45 minutes in the last, I'm certainly going back months now since you last did, and it takes you pretty much a full day to organise a transport, to wait until you can see him, and that you've kind of taken up the position over the years of being his unofficial library as well. Tell us about that.
So I think that it's very important for people to know that my father is an academic, and he holds a PhD in political science. And this is why we have been able to always secure the books. It's always important for him to have his books. And he's someone who reads between 8 to 10 books a month. I still remember when I once asked him to send me his favorite books, he sent me a list of 180 books. And I had very hard time to choose between them, so he had to choose one after one. So this is the person that he is. But I think that the treasure that we have in our family is my mother. My mother is the one who founded the international campaign to release my father, and she went all over the world and she partnered with very prominent leaders around the world to take his message all over. And I think that it's been a success because now he's getting the attention that he deserves, in my opinion.
I think I've heard you say in the past that if you spoke for an hour about your father, you could speak for a day about your mother, Fadwa, a lawyer, global campaigner for Marwan, who actually met Nelson Mandela to highlight your father's case. She's been to Robben Island. Tell us about that.
Yes, 11 years ago, the international campaign to free Marwan Barghouti and all Palestinian political prisoners was launched from Nelson Mandela's cell in Robben Island. And that was all after my mother's efforts of connecting with the great and late leader, Ahmed Kathrada, who spent 26 years in prison with Nelson Mandela. And Ahmed Kathrada has been a father figure and a great leader who led the international campaign until he passed. But also there is a lot of international leaders that were supportive of this campaign. And after that, this campaign took off, and it's very active in France, in different parts of Europe, in South Africa. In fact, I just came back with Sophia from South Africa, where we had amazing screenings, and at the same time, I learned so much about South African history and the similarities between South Africa and Palestine, and the similarities between Nelson Mandela and my father as well.
When you look at the situation with Israel right now, given that there's been a seismic shift, and you say, Arab, you haven't spoken to Marwan for 18 months, geopolitically, since October the 7th, is a hugely different situation. What do you think your father would do if he was released? Does he still see himself as a potential future Palestinian leader?
I think that I want to be mindful and respectful to the people of Palestine, because this is something that the Palestinian people have the right to decide, not him, not us as a family. For me, all I worry about is that my father becomes safe, because as we know, after October the 7th, he's been going through very, very tough times, with all the torture and all the targeting of him. The conditions that he's going through are really horrible. Of course, they sent him to solitary confinement. They keep transferring him between prisons. They don't give him enough food. He lost already 10 kilograms. He's been attacked physically and beaten up physically, and we know that he has injuries that he didn't get any medical treatment. But the day after October, the day after the war is hopefully, and there is a ceasefire for the genocide that is taking place, I think that my father, regardless of his position, would play a very important role in unifying the Palestinian people and in bringing political partnership between the political parties. And he would support, as he's been a big supportive of, the two-state solution, because he's been working for the two-state solution for more than 30 years. And the only reason that he led the Second Intifada is because he knew that there was no hope and there was no seriousness in the Israeli side of the two-state solution, but he's willing to do so and to take the Palestinian there.
Sophia, for those watching France 24 right now, just trying to get a sense of the complexities of politics in the Palestinian territories, there was a recent poll held in which certainly Marwan Barghouti came out on top. If you were going to have a politician take control, when you looked compared to Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian Authority, the 88-year-old, a Moraband organisation, really for many Palestinians now, Ismail Haniyeh as well, the leader of Hamas, he came out on top. And go back to 2021 where, well, we haven't had elections for 18 years in the Palestinian territories. Mahmoud Abbas called them. It looked like Marwan Barghouti was going to win and then cancelled them. So from your work and from speaking to Palestinians, and you're kind of going from root to the fruit of not knowing anything and suddenly knowing everything, investing yourself, what sense do you have that if he was released, what that path could be?
I mean, we spent, a good 3 years going in and out of Palestine, and we spoke to a varied group of people from, university students to people in the market buying fruit. And it was always 99% of the time, the conversation was Marwan Barghouti is our natural leader. He's one of us. He's a man of the street. He's not corrupted. He's spent so much time in jail now educating future Palestinians. He himself has gone on to be more educated than before. So I think he would be the natural leader. I think, as Arab said, it's definitely not my position to say, but I can only repeat what I heard on the street. And that's the power of documentary film. When you go in there with a camera and you ask questions to a variety of people, it's hard to ignore the power that Marwan has over Palestinian people. And I must just add to it that it's really important at this time to look at Hamas and Fatah. Marwan can speak to people that might have voted for Hamas in the past. And what Palestine needs now is a peaceful leader that can lead people to a non-violent future, to be a neighbor of Israel. And I think it's in Israel's interest as well that they have a leader like Marwan Barghouti who can play that role and bridge the different factions, be a unifying figure.
Israeli officials claiming that, yes, Marwan back in the 90s was interested in peace, but their claim is that he turned his back on it, frustrated. As you talked about Arab, there was a key player in the Second Intifada, that he was behind some key units as well, which he denies. He says he's a political prisoner. I just wanted to know, Sophia, briefly from you about your sense now that you have a right-wing coalition in Israel. If you look outside of that, the US, do you have any sense of what the US officials think? Obviously, Israel makes its own decisions, but there is powerful, persuasive voice from Washington.
I think that we need to see a very strong figure, a very strong voice from the US and from Israel put forward what they feel is needed. Now, as Arab said, we just came back from South Africa. In South Africa, there was Nelson Mandela, but there was also de Klerk on the other side. Mm-hmm. And it took those two people to build a bridge and unity. And I think at the moment we don't see that in Israel with Benjamin Netanyahu, unfortunately. I think there's a lot of people that would like to see him change and be replaced by someone else. Who that is, I don't know. I think this film really matters. I think it needs to be seen amongst the American political elites as well as elsewhere, in the UK and France, across Israel.
Great to speak to you both. I know it's on Apple TV. It's also screening around the world, including in Toulouse in a few weeks' time as well. Arab Barghouti and also Sophia Scott, thank you both so much for joining us this evening on Worldview.
Thank you so much.